today's video is definitely shorter than last week's, but it's very important. I wanted to talk about a concept that I think is fantastic and is very useful, and is the idea that thoughts are not true, nor are they false. They're hurtful or useful. This concept comes from Jason Satterfield, a very well-known cognitive behavioral therapist, a professor and practitioner, and it expands of the common belief or common wisdom that thoughts are not reality, right? And this concept goes a little bit beyond that, and because of that, it's very, very useful. And it takes a little bit of a while to understand this and to really internalize it and act on it. But once you do, it can make your life so much easier. So I use this with my athletes all the time. Today in particular, I use it with one of my athletes. She comes to me and she tells me, Juan, the bar is feeling really heavy today. She's doing weightlifting, she's doing weightlifting, and the bar feels really heavy to her. And that is a sensation, right? But in her head, that thought is really a thought of the bar is feeling very heavy. I'm feeling weak. I'm not gonna be able to lift more, right? And that thought, that line of thought, that belief of matching her sensation with her capacity is what is not true nor false. It's just a thought. It is honest that the bar feels heavy, but that feeling, that sensation has nothing to do with her capacity. There's not a one-to-one correspondence there. Any proficient and experienced lifter knows that, like, days in which the barbell feels really heavy are usually days in which everything goes very well and you end up lifting a lot, because again, sensation of weight is not the same as capacity, right? And so the problem with her is that if she thinks that this feeling is real, is true, what is going to happen to her during that session is that is going to become true. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and she's not going to be able to lift more. If you take this into another context, this happens also often to runners. For example, runners will have days in which their heart rate goes higher than usual and they're breathing harder, and the first thought that comes to their heads is like, I'm winded and I'm not in a good day. And usually what happens there is actually a really good day. Their body's being very efficient in producing CO2, and so they have to breathe harder to get more oxygen, because the relationship between CO2 and oxygen has to be maintained. And instead of like realizing that their aerobic system is actually being very efficient, not just because you're breathing more continuously, it means that you're being more inefficient. It might mean that you're being more efficient. They let this get in their head, and then their performance starts going down, right? So the thought, the observation, of course, is true, in the sense that, like, it coincides with the reality. There's an increase in heart rate, but the thought, like, my heart rate is really high, it's a relative thought. So it's relative, like, it's higher to what? To a memory that you have of sensations that should have felt. You can see what I mean there. And it's comparative to another memory. So it's not real. It's just a thought. But in thinking that it's real, my performance hinders. So that's the first Second example also happened today. It was another athlete. This is not an athlete that I coach, but it's an athlete that with whom I converse a lot and I follow and track. And he goes and tells me that he's not feeling as well prepared and as fit as he was feeling in February. He's gonna do the CrossFit Open, which is a competition. If you're not a CrossFit, it doesn't matter to you, but he has a competition in a month. And so he's not feeling he's not feeling as prepared as he felt on February. And that thought, so my first reaction to him was telling me, like, that's just a thought, right? That is not true. If you think it for a second, we have no idea how you really felt in February. The feeling, like, we wish we had a memory of feeling, right? Like, and we could compare our present day sensation with how we felt on February, but that memory is not real, and that comparison is not real. And the problem is that when you believe, if he believes that that thought is very real, that thought becomes very hurtful, because it just tells him that he's not ready. And so that, like, that is a very unproductive idea, and it comes from the fact that it's not true. Good. That doesn't mean that his capacity today is better than it was in February. We don't know. We will see during competition if it's real or not. But the thought is just a thought. So in those examples, you start seeing what I mean. But I think the best way to think about this is the following, and it's something that meditation practitioners have done forever and are very good at, and is, if you consider the idea of a mental image. So imagine I tell you to think about your house, and I want you to think about every little detail of your house, the color, the bricks, how it looks, and just close your eyes and imagine that house. You have that house in your head. It's very simple for you to accept the fact that that house is not real. It's not true or false. It's just an image in your head. Sure, it has some connection to your house, to your reality, but that has nothing to do with it, right? Like, your house is your house, and this is just an image. The same happens with narrative thoughts, what I call narrative thoughts, just thoughts that have words in them, and there are interpretations of states, right? It's just that we don't feel them like that. We really attribute reality to those thoughts. Okay, so the question is how we deal with this. How do we avoid thinking or attributing reality to our thoughts? So option number one, the most difficult one, is to spend hours and years meditating and really developing the concentration power, the sensory clarity, and the equanimity to detach from your thoughts and being able to see them as a part of the scenery, right? Like, and that takes a lot of work, more work than most of us have, and so that's probably not the most practical route for all of you. There's a second route that is the CBT way, the cognitive behavioral therapy way. That is, okay, observe that thought, understand it, and then reframe it, right? That reframing tool that I have written some blog posts about, and I invite you to look at them, that is a very powerful tool. In the case of my lifter, for example, when she comes and she, like, the bar is feeling very heavy, and she goes like, her automatic thought is like, I'm not gonna be able to lift that much today. Reframe that thought and be like, well, I don't know, that is not reality. I have a sensation. I don't know if that sensation coincides completely with my capacity. We'll have to see. What I need to do is observe and see if my capacity is actually lower, or if my capacity is good. For example, in the specific case of my lifter, I will concentrate. If I feel it a little weak, then I think, okay, safety first. And so I will consider checking my receiving positions for that bar. And if my receiving positions are looking solid, I know, like, hey, maybe, I can just keep going up. And if I focus on those receiving positions, I'm actually going to be focusing on something very important. So what felt like a day of low capacities immediately becomes a day in which, like, I'm very focused, very oriented. The same thing can be said for the runner, right? Like, okay, my breathing is a little bit fast. How can I make my performance better? What does this mean about my performance? Should I decrease my pace? Should I focus on a particular breathing scheme? What should I do? Instead of going right away into the route of, like, I'm breathing too hard, I'm gonna crash, right? Anyhow, so reframing is the tool there. Like, you want to first see the thought, second, see the maladaptive idea that that's reality, right? Like, When when we're making sensations and feelings equivalent to reality, there's a problem there. There's some line of thought that we have to identify, deconstruct, and not believe, right? That doesn't mean that we cannot observe reality, but we don't shouldn't equate our thoughts with reality. Good. That is the video for today. So the idea is the following again. Thoughts are not true or false. They're useful or hurtful. And when they're hurtful, it's easy to make them into useful by reframing, right? And reframing is just a way. It's another story that you're telling yourself, right? It's not a more true story, right? It's not a more valid story. It's a more useful story, and that is important. That is the whole point, and that is actually what makes it a little bit uncomfortable, this whole theory to accept, because we're very attached to the fact that our thoughts are our reality, and that comes from the fact that we're very attached to the idea that our thoughts are our identity, that we are our thoughts, right? That we are rational human beings, and we have the power of logic and reason in our heads, and that makes us very different from animals. And accepting that, like, our thoughts are not absolute, that our thoughts and our perceptions of reality can change. It's hard. It's hard. It makes us a little bit more vulnerable. It makes us a little bit more animal in some way. It makes us less absolute, and that's rough. Anyhow, I hope this help. Remember, thoughts are not false. They're not true either. They're hurtful or useful, and I hope you can apply this to like your daily life. That is it.